The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, it's Alasdair Parkes from Arup here. Just a few announcements before the webinar starts. If you're joining the webinar, you'll be muted, but there is a text box on your screen and you should be able to ask questions, and I will try and answer those questions at the end of the webinar. All of the presentation slides will be available on the website following the webinar. And all of you will receive a follow-up email with this information and links to the recording. On top of that, we'll be publishing a full tutorial version, which you will be able to download from the website with examples and try for yourself. Just waiting for any latecomers to join, and we'll be starting the webinar in a moment. Hello everyone, my name is Alasdair Parkes. I am a senior engineer at Arup and I'm also part of the Oasis software development team. Today's webinar is an introduction to Oasis Reporter. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to Reporter, which will include information on starting Reporter and an explanation of the basic menu layout. And I'll talk a little bit about opening and closing templates and reports and inserting and editing pages. The main part of the webinar will be based around an example, which will be a bicycle crank design. And I'll use that example to talk about adding D3 plot objects and THIS objects. I'll discuss variables and inserting text items. And I'll also show you how to run Reporter for multiple models. At the end, there'll be time for a brief overview of the advanced features in Reporter, and I'll also mention the standard templates. So I'm aware that some of you joining the webinar today won't have tried out Reporter very much, so why use Reporter? Well, what if I asked the question, what do you tend to do with your LS-DYNA results? So you might be looking at 3D contour plots of the model in D3 plots. You might look at graphs of particular data in THIS. But I'm aware that for many, when it comes to creating a report of those results, a quick screen grab is often what happens, and that can be quite messy. I always encourage people to make use of the image capture tools in D3plot and THIS, because they allow you to create more consistent, high-quality images. But either of these ways is still a very manual process. Every time you run a new LS-DYNA simulation, you'd have to generate these these images over again. And you might also have to pull out any key results values and perform any calculations that you're interested in. So the real advantage of Reporter is that just with a short amount of setup time, you can create a template which contains a recipe for how you want to post-process the results. And you can end up with a report that might look something like this. And Reporter can then directly access D3plot to pull out 3D contour plots. You can embed detailed graphical information from THIS, and you can also pull out key results data to present in the reports. You might also want to create a health check for your LS-DYNA simulation. You could look at the OTF or message files and determine the termination status and report on things like any added mass or energy balance. And this could be a report that you ran automatically on your server after every LS-DYNA analysis to give you a dashboard of health checks for your LS-DYNA analysis. And another feature of Reporter is all of the standard templates that we currently supply with Reporter, and they're really useful for those of you who perform the same detailed simulations and calculations as part of your design process. So what are the steps required to create a Reporter template and to use Reporter? Well, first of all, we need to start Reporter, which we can either do by launching the Reporter executable, but you can also access it from Oasis shell. Once Reporter's open, we would create a new template. We would then add objects to that template. Then we would define variables for the objects in the template, and that allows us to make the template generic so that we can use it to generate reports for more than one model. We can then generate the report as many times as we like and output it in a range of different formats, including PDF, Microsoft PowerPoint, and HTML. So I'm just going to start Reporter now to explain a little bit about the basic menu layout and so on. So Reporter is all contained within one main window, and the overall layout is quite similar to many applications that you're probably familiar with. There's a standard set of menus across the top and then various toolbars. So in the file toolbar along the top here, we can open existing reports and templates, and we can also click New to generate a new template. In the View toolbar, I can then control the zoom of the template, and there's options to control snapping to grid. Then down the left, we have more toolbars. The Design toolbar allows us to switch between Design View and Presentation View, and it's in Design View that we set up the design of our template with all of the various objects, and in Presentation View we can look at what the final report will look like once all of the images have been captured and displayed. In the Style toolbar, we can control line and font color, style, width, and so on. And then in the Tools toolbar, there is a whole range of Reporter objects, from simple lines and shapes to more advanced Reporter objects. And this is really where the power of Reporter lies. We can create D3plot, THIS, and primer objects that allow us to link in with all of the powerful features of those products. So the main example that we're going to look at today is a bicycle crank. And in this example, we will create a simple report for the analysis of bicycle crank design. The LS-DYNA simulations have already been run, and in the LS-DYNA simulation, the crank is fully restrained at one end, which is where the axle would be, and a 1000 Newton static load is applied at the other end, where the pedal would be. So we're expecting to see some deflection and stress in the crank under the applied load. By the end of the example, we'll have run the template on 3 different crank designs, and we'll have created reports in Reporter, PDF, and PowerPoint format. So back in Reporter now, I'm going to click New again to create a new template. And by default, templates appear in portrait orientation. So if I go to File, Page Setup, I can click Landscape to switch it to landscape orientation. And the first thing that we want to do is to add a 3D contour plot of some of our results from the crank analysis. We could just embed an image, but if we use a D3plot object, Reporter can link directly to D3plot. And this means that when you rerun your LS-DYNA simulation and the results change, the image will automatically be updated with the new results. So to create a D3plot object, we click the D3plot tool in the toolbar, and then I'm just going to drag a box on the screen, and this will contain the image that we'll capture. The D3plot object window appears, and if I click on Capture in the bottom left, it will start a linked D3plot session. Now, I'm not planning to explain in a huge amount of detail how D3plot or THIS work in this webinar. If you'd like to find out more information about D3plot and THIS, then please do look at the other webinars on our website. So for now, we're going to browse for our results file for crank design A. So once that's loaded in, I'm going to change the view by pressing ISO to get an isometric view of the crank. I'm then going to zoom and center it on the screen with AC, and then we're going to move to the final plot state, and I'm going to select von Mises stress as our data component. If I press SI, we'll get a shaded image plot. So now we're looking at a 3D contour plot of von Mises stress in our crank under the applied load. And one thing you might have noticed that makes this D3plot session a bit different is that because it's linked to Reporter, the Reporter objects window is showing. And this allows us to capture an image and save it to our Reporter template. So if I click Capture here, that has now captured everything about the setup for this image. So we've recorded the plot state and our selected data component, the view that we chose, and also any other blanking or transparency properties that might have been defined. And that's all saved and embedded into the Reporter template. So to return all of that information to Reporter, we go File, return to reporter. And now in our D3 plot window, you can see that the file name is included and all of the information about our capture has been recorded. If you wanted to change any of the details of that, you could click Update Capture at any time. But for now, we're going to click OK. So if I switch to Presentation View, then I can see what the final report will look like with that captured image in place. So we've got a picture here of von Mises stress. If I wanted to add another one of, say, X displacements, then I could do that in various different ways. So if I go back to Design View, I could create a new D3 plot object from scratch and go through the same process again. Or I could use the Select tool and copy and paste to create a new a copy of that D3 plot object. And then we could update the capture on that second object to change the data component to X displacements. But there's a quicker way. So I'm just going to right click and delete that second object because we won't need that now. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the first D3 plot object. So I'm going to edit the first D3 plot object and click Update Capture to open up our D3 plot session again. So it's automatically taken us back to that capture of von Mises stress. But in the reporter objects window, we can click the up arrow here, and that will take us to a second capture. If I change the displacement, the data component to X displacements, we're now looking at a 3D contour plot of X displacements. And in the reporter objects window, I can click capture. And now a second image has been captured and saved into reporter. So let's return to reporter now. In the D3 plot window, there are now two tabs, one for each object. And if I click OK, the D3 plot object turns red. Now this is because it's now actually a parent and a child linked together. They initially appear superimposed, so with the Select tool, I can drag the child alongside its parent. And we're now looking at a D3 plot object that will generate two images. Now the advantage of doing it this way is twofold. First, we can create one D3 plot object and then define all of the images that we want for our report in one D3 plot session. So that'll save us some time. And then also, when the report is being generated, reporter only has to run D3 plot once to generate all of those images. And you'll find that this is a lot quicker, especially if you have a very large results file and a slow network, because it will only have to read in that file once. So again, we can go to presentation view and then see what we have here. So we've got the von Mises plot on the left and the X displacement plot on the right. So the next thing that I'd like to do is to create a graph from THIS. So we're going to do that on a new page. So I'm going to go page, new page. We don't have to give the page a title, so I'm just going to click OK. And now we're looking at that second page. So to create a THIS object, it's very similar to D3 plot. We select the THIS object here and drag out a box which will contain our graph. And again, if I click on capture at the bottom left of the THIS window, it will open up a linked THIS session. So in THIS, if we browse for our results file and then click apply, that's loaded the results into THIS. If I wanted to plot internal energy, I would click global, select internal energy from the list, and click apply. And now we're looking at the internal energy building up in the crank as the load is applied. So to save this graph into our reporter template, I'll go File, Return to Reporter, and you'll now see that the results file is included, and there is a fast TCF script. Now, what's happened here is that THIS has saved all of the information required to produce that graph as a fast TCF script, which is now embedded in our THIS object in Reporter. For more information about fast TCF scripts, do watch our fast TCF webinar. So again, we can change the graph at any time by clicking Update Capture. But I'm going to click OK. Now for THIS objects, in order to see what they look like in the final report, we have to either generate the page, generate page, or we can generate the whole template from File, Generate. And so I'm going to generate the whole template. So it will actually generate the first page, which contains the D3 plot information first, and then the second page. Now, depending on the frame rate in the webinar, all of that might come up as in quite quickly, but hopefully you'll have seen that processing, and so now we can see the THIS graph on page 2, and I can use the scroll wheel to scroll back up to page 1 and see the D3 plot information too. So now we have a template with 3D contour plots and graphs, but we've just been looking at crank design A, and we have several crank designs. So in order to make this template work on any model, we need to make use of variables. Variables are a key feature of Reporter, and you can use variables to create a template for one model, like we've done, and then generate a report for many similar models. We can also use variables to retrieve key data values from D3plot and THIS to post-process and display in our reports. Reporter variables have a name and a value, and the value can either be a numeric value or a string of text, like these ones here. So here we have the default directory and job, or the default directory and file name of our model. And when the variables are written in the template itself, they must be enclosed by percentage signs. So here we've got percentage sign, default underscore job, percentage sign, and this syntax is the way that Reporter recognizes that it's looking at a variable and not just any other text. So if I go back into Reporter now, I can show you how this works. So from the variables menu, we can click Edit to open the variables window. And here is a list of all of the standard variables that appear in every template. And this includes the default dir, default directory, and default job variables. And we can use these to make sure that our template can point to any model we like. So I double click on default dir, I can then change it to point to crank design B. So I'm now selecting the directory which contains the results for crank design B. And the same for default job. I will point it towards the file name of the results in Crank Design B. Now, if you are using the Arup file name convention, in which you have PTF files for D3 plot and THF files for THIS, then you'll notice that the default job value doesn't have the .ptf extension, and this is so that we can use the same variable for both our D3 plot objects and our THIS objects. If you're using the LSTC convention, then you could just use the D3 plot file name instead. So now that we've defined our variables, we need to make sure that our objects make use of them. So I'm going to go back to the design view, and back on the first page, I'm going to edit the D3 plot object. And at the moment, the job file is hardwired to the Crank Design A results. So we want to change that to be variable. So I can type %, default dir %, /, default _job %.ptf. And if you were using the LSTC convention, you would write default dir / D3 plot. Now, it's sometimes quite time consuming to type these variables out, so what you can actually do is right click in the text box and insert a variable. So I can select the variable from the list that I want, and it will then appear again. And that makes things a little bit quicker. So now that I've made the file name variable, I also want to do the same thing for the THIS object. So again, I'm going to insert default dir / default job. And so this is now pointing the THIS object to the directory and then the file name of the results. So now that our objects are making use of the variables, we can generate the report again. So I'm going to use file generate, and this time the report should generate for Crank Design B. So now when we're in presentation view, we can take a look and see that yes, the design has changed. Crank Design B has some holes in it. So now we've got a template with links to D3 plot and THIS, and we've set up variables. So already we can use this template on any design we like. So I'm going to save this now. File save. And I'm going to save it as Crank Design. And what we can do now is we can use this template to run automatically on a whole list of results in batch, and we do this through Oasis shell. So if I close down Reporter now, I can open shell. If I right click on Reporter, I can open the Reporter options window. Here we can define a list of models, and we can choose the templates, and Reporter will run automatically on all of the models on our list and produce reports in various different formats. So under input file, I'm going to select each of the 3 crank designs, A, B, and C, and make sure they're all ticked so that they're all generated. If I browse for the template at the top of the list here, it will apply to all of the models in our list. So I'm going to choose the crank design template that we've just saved. And now Shell has automatically selected output locations and file names for all of the reports. And down here under output formats, we can select all of the different output formats that we want. So I'm going to add in a PowerPoint report as well. So what's going to happen here as well, we have all these options about how we actually run the template automatically in batch. And what's going to happen when we run the template by clicking Run Reporter is that a terminal window will appear and Reporter will launch and run automatically for each of our 3 designs. And each time it opens, it will automatically set the default dir and default job variables to point to each model in turn. And that's the way that it generates the report for the different results. So I'm going to click Run Reporter now. And again, I don't know how well this is going to show up on the webinar frame rate, but we're currently opening Reporter, and then it's opening up D3plot and THIS to generate the report for each of the 3 designs. So it's now just going through the final design now. So now that that's finished, we can look in our directory, and in each of the directories containing our results, we now have the ORR file, which is the report file, which contains the template with all of the results embedded in it. And we also have the PDF and the PowerPoint formats of our report. So I can open up our PDF result for crank design A, and if I change to crank design C, I could open up the PowerPoint for crank design C. And here you can see the different designs with the different results in them. So in this way, we've managed to create a simple example template, and we've run that template on multiple different models. There's some time here at the end to talk a bit about some of the more advanced features in Reporter. So I'm just going to go back into Reporter now and show you a couple of those. We have more objects here down here that I haven't discussed, and we'll probably leave detailed discussion of those for a future webinar. Just to give you an idea of what's available, we have the library program tool. And this allows you to run library program scripts with a whole list of different features. So we can look at scripts that run on the OTF file or the results message files to produce information about the mass information in your model, or the termination status, so that you can automatically pull out information about how the analysis has performed. There are scripts that help you with pedestrian impact processing for the automotive industry. There's a whole list of ready-made scripts in library format that you can take advantage of. And you can also write your own script. So there is a script object which with a JavaScript API that allows you to link in with all of the Oasis suite products. And so really, once you get the hang of Reporter, the possibilities, what you can achieve with automating your results reporting, they're really quite limitless. And a final thing that I would like to show you is the standard templates. So if I go File, Open Library Template, I can access a range of standard templates which have been set up to perform post-processing calculations according to various different protocols. And these will be very useful for those of you, especially in the automotive industry, who regularly do those sorts of analysis. And you can take those standard templates and modify them for your own purposes too. So that's brought us to the end of the webinar now. If you do have any questions, then please do type them in the box now. But if not, then if you have any questions afterwards, then please do get in touch with the contact details shown on the screen now. So the contact in the UK is dyna.support at arup.com. And in China, we have china.support, india.support, americas.support, or you can contact your local Oasis distributor. If there aren't any questions, then that brings me to the end. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you soon at the next webinar.